Welcome to the zoopocalypse!
At the Culpeper Zoo, young Timberwolf Gracie is displeased when Grandma Abigail makes her run survival drills with the pack. Grandma Abigail explains that they must be prepared should a disaster occur, but Gracie argues that nothing ever happens at the zoo. Grandma Abigail warns that dangerous critters surround them and reminds her that she is still part of the pack and they can overcome anything when the pack works together. Grandma Abigail suspects that their new resident animal is a sign of bad news. Later that night, a vast asteroid crashes into a satellite and a small chunk of debris falls into the zoo. The small chunk of space debris rolls into a barn, and one of the rabbits mistakes it for a peanut and eats it. Later, the unsuspecting rabbit gets infected with an alien virus that turns it into a creature. Gracie witnesses it and follows the trail back to the barn. She was surprised to find a glowing purple egg sac when a grotesque monster hand reached for her. Although she managed to escape outside, she quickly ran into newcomer Dan, a wild mountain lion who also happened to escape his enclosure when the meteor crashed. Gracie tries to make a run for it, but she gets tangled with Dan on a rope and hangs upside down. Dan breaks free and is about to attack Gracie when he is shot with a tranquilizer dart by the zookeeper. Gracie thought she was saved when she was also shot with it. Gracie later wakes up in a cage in the veterinary office while Xavier, a red-ruffed lemur, watches late-night movies as soon as the zookeeper leaves for the day. When asked how he escaped from his cage, Xavier explains how he learned to pick a lock from watching movies. Dan tries to trick Xavier into breaking him free, but Gracie warns him that he is a wild mountain lion. Gracie insists that Xavier free him so she can warn the pack of the creature she saw at the barn. Xavier recognizes the creature she describes as the same as the one in the movies and worries that it will become a bigger threat once it hatches. When he is about to free her, Dan argues that only he can help Xavier escape, bragging that he is from the wild and has the necessary skills to survive and escape. Meanwhile, the alien egg sac finally hatches, and a grotesque creature emerges. It quickly feeds on the unsuspecting barn animals, infecting and turning them into rabid creatures. Once everyone has been turned, the creatures break out of the barn to infect others. They quickly overwhelm the monkey enclosure and attack them in their sleep. Felix, a pompous proboscis monkey, escaped by ruthlessly leaving his friends behind. He tries to hide inside the veterinary office, but struggles to open the door by himself when Frida, the feisty capybara, rams the door and opens it wide open. While they were arguing, Ash, the sarcastic ostrich, was running for his life, pleading with them to wait for him. Felix and Frida try to close the door on him, but Ash gets inside before they can close it. Just when they thought they were saved, they were surprised to find Dan and Gracie in cages known to be carnivores. They were relieved they were still inside cages when Xavier suddenly broke out Gracie. Frida explains that monsters overrun the entire zoo. Dan begs the others to free him, promising to abide by the watering hole rule. But when confronted by Ash, he can't ignore his predator instincts, so the group decides to leave him in a cage. Just as they argued about what to do, they suddenly heard loud banging at the door, revealing Fred, the giant gorilla-turned-monster Felix left behind while he was saving himself. Gracie tried to hold the door down while the others struggled to open the other door. Worried for his life, Dan forcefully breaks out of his cage and tries to escape with the zoo keycard when he gets hit again with the tranquilizer dart. Gracie and Dan get separated from the group, so she makes a deal with Dan to give him the keycard if he escorts her back to her pack. While arguing in a ball pit, they run into Poot, a young pygmy hippo which Gracie convinces Dan to take with them, worried for his safety. When they finally arrive at the wolf enclosure, Gracie is horrified to find the entire pack has been turned. Although she asks him to leave her behind, Dan takes Gracie and Poot to safety. Meanwhile, Xavier, Felix, Frida, and Ash escape to the back room, dodging turned creatures roaming the hallways. Felix thought they could climb up the wall, but he witnessed one of the monkeys get electrocuted when it did. Ash suggests they stay put until sunrise for when the humans return. Felix and Ash get into an argument again, and this time their roughhousing accidentally hits the controls and turns on all the attractions at the zoo. Dan and Gracie discover the creatures surrounding them while they are arguing. Dan fends them off while Gracie escapes with Poot on a cable car. Fred, the giant gorilla, jumps onto the oncoming cable car, but Gracie musters the courage and decapitates it when they are cornered. Even when severed, the creature doesn't die and furiously chases after them. Dan, Gracie, and Poot safely fall on top of a building, and Fred falls on top of an infected giraffe. When they think it is over, Fred, combined with the giraffe, becomes a horrific monster. Dan notices that the keycard is stuck in one of its legs, so he recklessly charges at it. When the creature tries to attack Gracie, Dan pulls it away from her and chases him instead. While Dan wrestles the creature, Gracie takes the keycard off it, and Dan nearly gets thrown off the edge. Gracie runs up to check on him, only to discover that Dan has also been turned. She slowly backs away from him when they suddenly fall from the skyscraper. Cornered, Dan furiously chases after Gracie in the security office, but falls headfirst into a basin full of water and soap. Gracie can't leave him behind and pulls him out of the water when she surprisingly discovers he is cured. Realizing there's a cure for it, Gracie suggests they save everyone, but Dan refuses, claiming they need to focus on getting out and saving themselves. Gracie calls him a coward, but Dan argues that she's stupid for thinking she could save everyone. Due to different opinions, they decide to go their separate ways, giving him the keycard she promised. At the gift shop, Felix notices that Gracie has the keycard to take them outside the zoo, so he abandons the others, leaving the door open for an infected kangaroo and her Joey to get inside. Later, Felix sneaks up on Dan and steals the key away from him. As he was headed for the exit, he was suddenly attacked by infected tree frogs. Dan grabs him from behind when Felix gets cornered and pulls him to safety. As they walk towards the exit, Dan realizes he is just as self-serving and pompous as Felix if he left. He gives Felix the key and returns to the others. When Felix finally arrived at the exit, he struggled to open the gates, but when he did, infected tree frogs cornered and infected him. Meanwhile, Gracie returns to the gift shop with Poot, hoping she can convince the others to help. After convincing the others, they quickly make preparations to save everyone. Gracie goes to retrieve something that will attract the monsters, Frida and Poot will get the soap, and Ash and Xavier will lure the giant infected elephant. Gracie then lures all the infected animals into the wolf enclosure, but when she thinks everything is going according to plan, Frida and Poot get surrounded by the infected, and Gracie slips and nearly falls off the cliff. Suddenly, Dan arrives to the rescue and pushes the cart with soap boxes into the enclosure. Gracie then signals Ash and Xavier to have the elephant topple the giant water tower in the zoo. Everyone celebrates having executed the plan, but is horrified to discover that it didn't cure the animals, and instead combined to become one giant monster. Frida claims she will stand her ground, but the big monster swallows them. Dan gets furious when even Poot gets eaten, but Gracie pushes him to safety when the giant monster is rampaging. When an infected Poot tries to attack them, he swallows a snow globe when it rolls up. Unable to swallow it whole, he spits it out when it suddenly plays brief music that turns him back to normal. Gracie remembers that when Dan was cured, the radio was on, and they realized that music was the cure. Although Dan is willing to help Gracie with her plan, the giant monster returns and swallows him up, leaving Gracie and Poot left. Gracie quickly runs towards the big clock tower as the giant monster tries to escape the zoo and wreak havoc. Poot distracts the giant monster while Gracie cranks the watchtower to 7 o'clock, where it will play the zoo's opening theme song. Gracie succeeds just before an infected Felix can reach her, and the cured animals then continue singing until everyone, including the original bunny, returns to normal. With everyone cured and the giant monster defeated, Gracie is reunited with her pack, and Grandma Abigail is impressed by her actions. Fred is reunited with Felix, while Xavier and Ash forge an unlikely friendship. Gracie was about to introduce Dan to the pack when she witnessed him leaving without a word. Gracie catches up to him, but before she tries to convince him to stay, she realizes that Dan would prefer to be out in the wild. Dan leaves with her the key card, should she decide she is done with the zoo life. Gracie returns to her friends, who have become part of her uncanny pack. Thank you for watching. Check out these other videos, and subscribe and tap the bell to be notified about our latest videos. See you next time.